Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to Kottabos Space Program, where today we are having a look at the TiktaalikDreaming Advanced Propulsion Systems mod, which is being made by forum user TiktaalikDreaming. And what this glorious little piece of work looks to add into the game is two amazing nuclear thermal rockets for you to enjoy. So let's jump right on into the vehicle assembly building and have a look at what we do get. Now they are quite large engines, so let's grab a Mark 1-3 command pod for size comparison's sake, and then go down to our mod filter, just leaving on TDAPS. And this being a propulsion mod, head to the engine category, where we have our two sole little parts here. The first of which is the gas core nuclear thermal rocket, which has a built-in alternator producing 160 electric charge per second. Now the engine itself produces a whole lot of thrust at 12,374 max kilonewtons in a vacuum with an ISP of 1,009. Now to do it, it uses liquid fuel, but also powdered tungsten and uranium tetrafluoride. Now, thankfully, it houses its own supply of both. Now, for the powdered tungsten, you're going to have a max of 550 tungsten there. It defaults to 250, though. And for the uranium tetrafluoride, you get a max of 350. It defaults, though, to 175. And along with that, we also have a battery holding a max of 80 electric charge. Defaults to 0, but that's going to fill up in, well, a half a second with that alternator. Now, the next engine we have is the slightly longer brother of this one, and that is the Multimode gas core nuclear thermal rocket. Now, this one has the exact same stats for the alternator, the battery, the tungsten, as well as the uranium tank, so I'm not even going to mention those. Now, being multi-mode, though, this is where it really gets fun, because in the low power mode, you get, or rather you produce 1,491 max kilonewtons in vacuum with an ISP of 5,097, and in the high mode, or I guess higher thrust mode, you produce 3,500 max kilonewtons in a vacuum with an ISP of 3,568. So both of these engines are quite powerful. The single mode gas core nuclear thermal rocket actually may be, in my opinion, a bit too powerful. I mean, come on. 12,000, over 12,000 kilonewtons of thrust. That is a pretty darn impressive. Now let's pop these on here to take a look. Now this is the single mode, kinda cheaty, insane thrust engine, and look at this thing. It is gorgeous. Just look at all of the detail that has gone into this thing. It is beautiful. Now, the multi-mode one is more or less identical, as you can see here, until you get to the end of the rocket, where I'm suddenly forgetting the name of this particular part here, the nozzle? Question mark? Which is basically just twice the length. And that is really the only visual difference between the two. Now, what is fun, of course, we do have attachment points on the top and bottom, and you can see that the anode actually is identical between the two, so it looks like there's a little bit of copy and pasting going on between the two of these, which doesn't just extend to the node, but we'll talk more about that in a second. But if we do pop this one down here, we have a very nice protective shroud there, which of course you can turn on or off. I do love the little slits that are around in various places, though. Adds just a nice little fun detail, a little peek at what's behind the curtain. Now, as for that copy-paste comment, my one complaint I have right now, which is a really minor, stupid little complaint, is that both of the engines are actually named exactly the same. I feel like the mod maker made the multi-mode one first, and then copy-pasted it into the single mode, kind of cheaty, super powerful thrust one, and thus we have the same attachment node quite far past the engine at the bottom here, as well as the same name on the parts in here. It's a minor complaint, which hopefully it does get fixed relatively quickly, because it is just a simple little thing. At least I believe so, to fix. And overall, though, these are some amazing engines. They are extraordinarily powerful, and it is quite cool with them having their own new resources of this uranium tetrafluoride and powdered tungsten. And yeah, they don't use a lot of this. Now, on the rocket I have waiting on the launch pad already, I left the engine at its default with only half of the amount in the tank for the powdered tungsten and uranium tetrafluoride, and we don't even use, I think, 10% of this to go through all of this liquid fuel in the S3 tank, as well as the ADTP 2-3 tank. We use all of that, actually around 8,000, or nearly 8,000 liquid fuel, and barely touch any of that powdered tungsten and uranium tetrafluoride. So you can really get a lot of use out of this stuff. I kind of see why it was defaulted to half. If you default it all the way to the max, it would just be kind of a waste. In fact, this rocket could probably launch with both of these being at around here. Now, this being the single mode, extraordinarily high thrust version, if we throttle this baby all the way up, it flies real quick and gets into space real fast. Let me actually just move the camera here for a moment so we can get our thumbnail image. Beautiful. And then launch this baby in a 3, a 2, a 1, a liftoff. Now, at start, it's not the fastest of thrust to begin with. I mean, we do have a ton of weight here, but considering how powerful and how many kilonewtons we have behind this thing, oh boy, does it get up to speed real quick. As you can see, we're already starting to burn a bit. We do make it into space without exploding from heat with this rocket, but it's close. As you can see, we're almost out of liquid fuel now with how much liquid fuel this thing does eat up. But yeah, we've barely touched these two. I mean, look at that. We went from, what was it? I don't even remember what the defaults were now, but we're now down to 248 on the tungsten and 174 on the uranium. Those resources barely get touched. You really do need mostly just a huge amount of liquid fuel to power this thing. And with all of that thrust, we got up to 567,000 meter, well, not orbit, it's just a ballistic trajectory, but still, that's how powerful this thing is. With how heavy this craft was, it got it into space with no worries whatsoever. So imagine a couple of these on a large ship you may be building in orbit. You're gonna be able to get to other planets pretty darn nicely with this thing. It is just such a cool, beautiful looking engine, and I definitely recommend you go and have a look at this thing. And if you would like to check it out, you can have a look at the link in the description as per usual. But that is going to be it for today, my friends. I hope you all have enjoyed, that you do come back for the next, but until that time, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good one.